What's going on, YouTube? Welcome to another Regulator Recordings production. And I'd also like to welcome you to my new channel. My previous channel was unjustly terminated. I was making reaction videos giving my thoughts and reactions on my favorite hip-hop music. Sony Music Entertainment and their criminal business practices violated my First Amendment right. My channel was reported as a rebel channel dedicated to breaking the rules, and without trial, without appeal, without even a chance to explain anything, they deleted that channel. So we're letting that go and we'll say goodbye. And this is something completely new. I will no longer waste time doing reaction videos, having copyright strikes and copyright notices, and my channel constantly getting harassed. I'll leave that to the other channels that are dedicated to that. Apparently, I'm the only one in YouTube history not allowed to make a reaction video. So, we're going to start something completely new. My most successful video on my previous channel was my book review, The Adam and Eve Story, written by Chan Thomas. Although those first thousands of views got deleted, it's fine. I got it back up. We're getting them counts back up, them views back up, and that's all that matters. I made that for whoever was meant to come across it. So, let's start this entirely new series, and I want to start my next book review. Now, let's get straight into that and let the past be gone. And here we are, our next book review, Lemuria, the Lost Continent of the Pacific. Lemuria is the original civilization, the cradle of all civilizations and human history. Now, to cover that would take many videos and many hours to get into. Therefore, the PDF is down in the description. I'll leave that up for you to look into. Very fascinating knowledge to learn. Why I wanted to share this book is because it has expanded my knowledge into multiple books, which is an expansion of what I've learned from the Bible itself. The book of Genesis, chapter 6, verse 4. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men and bare children, which were mighty men of old, men of renown. This is what expanded me into the book of Jasher, as well as the book of Enoch. Enoch tells us even deeper history of the fallen angels mixing with mankind, creating giants, animal-human hybrids. They were corrupting all of the earth and all of the flesh. If you'd like to learn more on the subject of the fallen angels mixing with mankind, watch my previous book review, The Adam and Eve Story, written by Chan Thomas. I give full readings from both Enoch, Jasher, as well as the Bible. The Lemurians were a pre-flood race, which means they lived in a more prehistoric environment. As we know, things back then had longer lifespans, as well as grew to larger sizes. The shortest of the Lemurians were known to be about 7 foot, the tallest around 15 foot. Now, when you mix those type of human genetics with the fallen angels, you get great giants. Some recorded at 40 foot, others recorded as tall as 300 foot. You also get hybrids of every kind, every animal, everything you can possibly imagine mixed together. This is all something that has been taking place since the beginning of mankind. It's not something modern. It's something that the very first civilization discovered. Lemuria existed for thousands of years. which means they got to advance to great levels of technology. They were mixing with the angels for thousands of years. Now look at America. We are 243 years old, and we've come to great levels of technology in just a small 200-year span. Imagine thousands of years. Technology was truly greater in the past. Now, how is all of this relevant to our modern day? We must start with, I remember Lemuria. Lemuria is called the lost continent of the Pacific because it was submerged. It sank into the Pacific. Now, the reason why supposedly is unknown. But if we look into the memoir of Richard Shaver, I Remember Lemuria, we'll find out exactly what happened. Who was Richard Shaver, and how did he come up with this memoir of I Remember Lemuria? Shaver claimed that he could hear voices being projected into his head through the welding equipment he was using at a Ford assembly plant in Michigan. The voices were those of a civilization living beneath the surface of the earth. Shaver claimed that he remembered parts of his past lives as Mutan Mion and his various escapes over 12,000 years ago from the civilization's caves beneath the earth. Mr. Shaver wrote I Remember Lemuria during the 1930s, and as you can see, for it being the 1930s, he was truly ahead of his time. The self-portrait alone is proof of that. That's something that didn't become common until the implementation or creation of social media. So, let's now look into his previous life as Mutan Mian. Now, I want everybody to keep that name in their mind. Mutan Mian. Let's look into its meaning, its definition. The name Mutan Mian, broken down into the letters and sounds of this ancient language, becomes Mu, man, T, integration, growth, An, animal. Mion means man-child seed. So the name means man-spore cultured to new forms by integration growth forces. In other words, synthetic mutation by the use of force or rays. Mutan Mion explains the way the races and species are hybrid together are breeding, injections, radioactive rays, or gene splicing. The continent of Lemuria existed for thousands of years before it submerged into the Pacific. The Lemurians were mixing with the fallen angels and integrating with them for thousands of years. As the Bible tells us, there is nothing new under the sun. Since the very beginning, the very first civilization, they were building these massive cities inside of the earth, great laboratories, ancient genetic scientists known as technicons. The City of Titans, which was published in the June 1947 issue of Amazing Stories. Before I read to you about the City of the Titans, which are referred to as giants, hybrids, and the elder gods, who Enoch tells us are the fallen angels that masqueraded as gods in various forms. This city is located inside of the earth, under Mu's center. Therefore, I want to go back over the book of Genesis, chapter 6, verse 4. And that reads, There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. Now let's reread that. There were giants in the earth in those days and after that. It says in the earth, not on the earth, in the earth. And that's exactly what the city of Titans is. A city of massive giants located inside of the earth. They are in the earth, not on it. The earth is far bigger than what we know and understand. There are massive civilizations since ancient times living underneath us. UFOs and so-called aliens are nothing more than hybrid races that have been around since the beginning of time. Now, let's get into this. The city of the Titans. I remember Lemuria begins in the continent of Atlantis. Mutin Mion is an artist and citizen of Atlan. Chapter 1, City of the Titans. I was working in the studio of Art and Grow when I heard a great laugh behind me. If ever there was derision in a laugh, there was derision in this one. I flung down my gaudy brushes and my palette and turned about in a rage to find the master himself, his red cave of a mouth wide open in his black beard. I cooled my temper with an effort, for great indeed is Alton Grow, master artist of Sub-Atlan. I am sorry, Mutin Mion, he gasped, but I can't control my laughter. No one has ever conceived, much less executed, anything worse than what you have put upon canvas. What do you call it? Proteus in a convulsive nightmare? But Alton Grow could control himself, I was sure. It is one of the things I have learned of the really great in the arts. They make no pretenses. He was laughing because he wanted to tell me frankly what he thought of my ability as an artist. It is bad enough when your friends mock your work, and they had. But when the master is convulsed in laughter, it is high time to wake up to the truth. It is true, great Alton Grow, I said humbly. I want to paint, but I cannot. I haven't the ability. Alton Grow's expression softened. He smiled, and as he smiled it was as though he had turned on the sunlight. Go, he said. Go to the deeper caverns at Mu Center. Once there, study science. Learn to mix the potions that give the brain greater awareness, a better rate of growth. He patted my shoulder and added a last bit of advice. Once you have mixed the potions, take them, drink them, and grow. He passed on, still chuckling. Why is the truth always so brutal? Or does it just seem brutal when it comes from those wiser than you? I take his advice. I would go to Tien City at Mu Center. I would go to the science schools of the Titans. Never before had I considered leaving Sub-Atlan, my birthplace, or as I should express it, my growth place, for I am a culture man, a product of the laboratories. In fact, I remember no other place on Mu, although it is fact that during the process of my development to culture manhood, I roamed the culture forest of Atlantis, which is the name for surface Atlan. Sub-Atlan is just below Atlantis, while Tien City is located at the center of Mu at a great depth below Sub-Atlan. The walls of the great cavern in which Tien City is located are hardened to unintelligible strength by treatment with ray flows, which feed its growth until it is of great density. There are many other cities which grew through the centuries to vast size. but none so great as Tien City. Some are abandoned, but all are indestructible. Their cavern walls too dense to penetrate or to collapse. Since Tien City is located near the center of Mother Mu, gravity neutralizes itself by opposition. It is very comfortable. Many of the Titans live there, and in fact, it is almost a Titan city. There also are the mighty ones, the elders of Atlan's race's government. Huge they are, like great trees, many centuries old and still growing. I had long wished to see them, and now that I had decided to go, the thrill was greater than any I had ever experienced. I was going down into the city of many wonders. Out on the street, I took one of the many vehicles that are provided for travel about the city. These vehicles, their weight reduced by a gravity deflection device, are powered by motors whose energy is derived from a gravity-focusing magnetic field, by which one side of a flying wheel becomes much heavier than the other. This is accomplished by bending gravity fall, in the same way that a lens bends a light ray. The topless buildings of Sub-Atlan fled by me, and soon I neared the squat entrance to the shafts that fell. From Sub-Atlan to Center Mu to Tien City, home of the Titans, I knew that swift elevators dropped down these shafts, but I had never traveled in one of them, because I knew the control man of one of the elevators, having talked with him often of Tien City and the wonders he had seen in it. I went to his shaft for my descent. He was glad to see me and very much surprised to learn that I was going to Tien City. "You will never regret it," he declared. The car dropped sickeningly, so swiftly that a great fear grew in me that I would be crushed by the deceleration. When we finally stopped in panic, I watched the indicator's two hands move slowly toward each other as though to cover its face in shame. Then, with little sensation, the car stopped. Here at the center of Mu, I had become nearly weightless, and the seizing of even such swift motion did not have ill effects upon my weightless body. I knew that I would not have that fear again. Two fat Atlans stepped out of the car ahead of me, sighing with relief at their renewed weightlessness, which they had obviously been anticipating. As I was about to follow them from the car, the control man drew me aside. "Fear rides the ways down here," he whispered, his sharp-pointed, cat-like ears quivering and alert. "Fear is a smell down here that is ever in the nose, a bad smell too. Try to figure it out while you are down here, and tell me too if you get an answer." I did not understand what he meant, but I promised anyway. The smell of fear in Tien City? Immediately, I was immersed in the sensually shocking appeal of a veriform crowd, mostly at this hour, a shopping rush of female veriforms, while there were many of my own type and of the elevator control man's type. There were a great number of creatures of every shape the mind could grasp, and some that it could not. All were citizens. All were animate and intelligent hybrids of every race that space crossing had ever brought into contact, from planets whose very names are now lost in time. The Technicons may have been wrong in the opinion of some when they developed veriform breeding, but they have certainly given life variety. I had never seen so many veriforms before. At a corner of the vastly vaulted way, there were many. Roulette platforms crossed and recrossed each other. I stepped to a telescreen and dialed the student center. The image of a tremendous six-armed Sybil female filled the screen, and the electrically augmented body appeal of the mighty life within her seized the youth in me and wrung it as no embrace from lesser female ever had. "And what?" Her voice shook me as a leaf in an organ pipe. Might a pale and puny male like you want in Tien City? You look as if you've never had enough to eat, as if love had passed you by. Did you come down here because no one wanted you elsewhere? I grinned self-consciously back at her image, my voice a feeble piping in comparison to hers. I have come to learn something beside drawing lines around dreams. I am a painter from the subsurface who has decided that knowledge of actual growth is more important than false growth of an untrue image upon a canvas. I wondered what the master would have said to hear me. "You all right?" she boomed back, her 6 arms engaged in complex and mysterious movements, picking up and laying down instruments and tools in bewildering rapidity. Her attention elsewhere, yet enough remaining on me to hold me bound in an attraction as strong as a towing cable. She was a 40-foot Titan, her age unknowable. As I thought upon this and tried not to think of the immense beauty and life force of her, I suddenly realized she was hiding fear. I have a peculiar faculty for sensing hidden emotions. That bluff greeting had been a hidden wish to drive me from some danger, but I did not speak of it, for I read that caution in her, a very strong mental flow that fairly screamed, "Don't!" This kind of fear was a wonder and a new thing to me, for danger was a thing long banished from our life. Then she spoke reluctantly, it seemed. "Go to the center of the Hall of Symbols. There you can ask a student or an instructor who will tell you all you need to know." The grip of the woman life in her left my mind. She was gone from my vision. As I turned from the telescreen, my mind insisted on visualizing that 6-armed embrace, its probable effect upon a man in love. I shivered in spite of the warmth, but not from fear. The blood of the Titans was alive, I thought, strangely and wonderfully alive. I stepped into a roulette at the curb, inspected the directory, then inserted a coin, and dialed the number of the building that housed the Hall of Symbols. I leaned back while the automatic drive of the roulette directed the car through the speeding traffic, its electric eye more efficient than my own. Yes, much more efficient than my own at the moment, which were wondering over the figure of a veriform female on the walk, whose upper part was the perfect torso of a woman, and whose lower part was a sinuously gliding 30 feet of brilliantly modeled snake. You could have never escaped her embrace of your own will once she had wrapped those life-generating coils around you. I thought upon it. The gen of these veriforms was certainly more vital, possibly because the Titan Technicons who lived here kept the people healthier. Perhaps the hybrids were more naturally fecund to microspore. It had indeed been a day of brainstorms. I mused when some old Technicon had realized that not only would a strong, integrated field with a rich EXD supply cause all the matter to grow at an increased rate, but would also cause even the most dissimilar life gens to unite. It has been the realization that had resulted in various form life. Most of the crosses by this method had resulted in an increased strength and fertility. They now were more numerous than 4-limbed men and often superior in mental ability. Automatically, my mind associated the embrace of the snake woman with the 6 arms of the giant Sibyl of Info, and I decided that I understood why Autumn Grow had driven me here with his scorn. If I didn't learn about life here, I never would anywhere. That had been what I reasoned. Soon I was striding between the pillaring fangs of the great beast's mouth. That was the door of the Hall of Symbols, where the schoolways converged. About was the bustle attendant to any roulette way station. bearers rushing, travelers gazing about lost in wonder at the vaulting glitter of sculptured pillars and painted walls done by men of a caliber whose work Roe, like myself, cannot grasp entirely. Paintings and sculpture were hammered into the brain, a message of the richness of life that immense mutual effort can give the lift unit, the pro. This richness of life was pictured in a terrible clash with evil, its opposite. The hot fecundity of life and health growth was a sensuous blow. Upon the eyes, the soul leaped to take a hand and make life yet more worthwhile. I could not cease gazing at the leaping vault of pictured busy figures whose movements culminated in that offer to the spirit of man to join them in molding life to a fit shape. My rapt study of the paintings was interrupted by the sound of a pair of hooves that clicked datantly to a stop beside me. I glanced at the newcomer who had stopped to stare up at the paintings, also in that curious way that people have when they see another craning his neck, and my glance became a stare. What was the use of aspiring to be an artist, my reason said, if those great masters who had placed that mighty picture book on the vaulting walls above were so easily outdone by the life force itself? She was but a girl, younger than myself, but what a girl! Her body was encased in a transparent glitter, her skin a rosy pale purple, her legs mottled with white, ended in a pair of cloven hooves. And as my brain struggled to grasp her colorful young perfection, she wagged her tail. It was all too much. Speculating about the life-generating force possible in the veriform creatures was one thing, but having it materialize beside you was another thing entirely. Such a beautiful tale it was, of the softest, most beautiful fur. What were you staring at? She asked. The paintings? I stuttered, then answered, the paintings, I guess. Yes, the paintings. I'm a painter. Was a painter. I gave up. I couldn't talk. I had to look. They are marvelous, aren't they? She declared. Enthusiastically, I always look at them when I come to the school. I am studying medicine. Now take that painting up there. On her arm and breast, I saw the medical school insignia. A man's figure struggling with a great snake disease. It took brains to study medicine. This exquisite young thing, so full of gen force, so powerfully attractive, and was smart too. And almost instantly she proved herself to be extremely friendly and companionable. She went on talking, describing, and theorizing in a gush of amiable conversation that left me dizzy, gasping, and admiringly breathless. She told me everything about the paintings and the statues, and before I realized it, we were walking on together. She was full of all sorts of information. It seemed she had taken it upon herself to be my guide and to teach me the meaning of everything we saw. Her cheerful chatter soon told me all about herself. Her studies, the schools, the great doors that led to each one from the central gathering place of the school rolloutways. The hall was justly famous for these doors. Before us now was the door to the medical school, formed of pillaring figures, struggling with the coils of snakes. Next to it was the marine school door, formed of a crab whose huge claws met to form the arc. A planetron and pendulum device to tell of the nearness of bodies in space, formed the entrance to the School of Space Navigation. All the ages of science of immortal growth had combined here in the symbols that formed many doors. So as we conclude this fascinating first chapter, we can see its correspondence with the Bible, the book of Enoch, and as well as our modern world. We are told of this massive city inside of the earth filled with hybrids of every kind imaginable. Every hybrid of every animal and every human has been made. Those hybrids have made other hybrids. They are also making synthetic hybrids. Mutant Mion admitted to being a product of the laboratories, which means he wasn't even a real person born of a natural birth. He was a synthetic person created in an artificial womb. Just like the book of Enoch and the book of Jasher tell us, the fallen angels were sinning against all flesh. All of mankind and all animals were being mixed together. Everything. Mutant Mion says every species that had ever come into contact with the earth had been hybrid together. Every human race had been hybrid together. These things were of every shape and every size imaginable. Some your mind could grasp, and others that it could not. The few hybrids or variforms described by Mutant Mion are easily identifiable. First are the Titans, which are also known as giants. The Bible tells us in the book of Genesis, chapter 6, verse 4, there were giants in the earth in those days and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men and bare children. They begat giants, which were mighty men of old, men of renown. These giants, the Bible tells us, are in the earth. Mutant Mion tells us Tien City, which is a Titan city or city of giants, is located inside of the earth, exactly as the Bible tells us. Mutant Mion goes to describe other hybrids, such as a cat-like man, which resembles the lion men of Moab. Two of them were killed in the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 23, verse 20. Mutant Mion describes also a 40-foot titan, which has 6 arms. Well, if we look into the Hindu religion, or what I call the Hindu history, you will see that they worshipped many beings with many arms. Next, he describes a reptilian snake-like woman, which resembles Medusa in the Greek mythology, which was a top half of a perfect woman, the bottom half which was that of a 30-foot snake. Mutant Mion falls in love with a satyr named Arl. She was half human, half fawn, which was a deer or elk-like creature. Satyrs can also be of half human, half goat, which are referred to in the Bible in numerous verses. Isaiah 13:21, Leviticus 17:7, as well as many others. What we are told by Mutant Mion is these hybrids are made by breeding, genetic splicing, injections, or radioactive rays or radioactive exposure, that they were created by these elder gods known as technicons. The book of Enoch, as well as the book of Genesis, as well as the book of Jasher tell us these technicons are the fallen angels. They appeared in various forms, or as Mutant Mion would say, veriforms, and they began deceiving mankind into giving sacrifices to devils as gods. They were mixing every race and every species of animal, creating hybrids of every kind the mind can grasp and other kinds the mind cannot. Everything we hear about in Titan City or Tien City is exactly what Enoch tells us the fallen angels were doing while interacting with mankind. They went into the earth because God cursed them into the earth until the great day of judgment. They were teaching the secrets of heaven. Those secrets of heaven were as told in the book of Enoch, chapter 19, which reads, Uriel said to me,
Here will stand the angels who have joined themselves with women. Their spirits appeared in various forms and defiled mankind by leading them astray into sacrificing to demons as gods. They will remain here until the day of great judgment, when they will be judged and made an end of. The fallen angels' wives will be with them. Their offsprings became the giants of legend, the beasts of mythology, and the great men of renown throughout history. The book of Enoch tells us each of the 200 chose a wife for himself, and they began to go in unto them and mate with them. And they taught them sorcery and enchantments and the cutting of roots, and made them acquainted with plants. These women became pregnant and gave birth to great giants, whose height reached up to 3,000 elves. The giants consumed all the food, and when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. They also began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. Then the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. Azazel taught men to make swords, knives, shields, and armor from the metals of the earth. He taught the women how to see behind them, how to make bracelets, ornaments, and other kinds of jewelry using precious stones, and the beautifying of the eyes with makeup of various colors. This led them astray into fornication and ungodliness, and they became corrupt in all their ways. Semyaza taught enchantments and root cuttings. Amaros taught how to resolve enchantments. Barakel taught astrology. Kokabel taught constellations. Tamil taught knowledge of the clouds. Arazdel taught the courses of the moon. As mankind began to perish, they cried out
to heaven. So as we have observed and identified the original cradle of civilization as the people who mixed with the fallen angels, we have identified these mystery schools William Cooper told us about as the schools of the sciences located in the Hall of Symbols. Everything taught here is exactly what Enoch tells us the fallen angels were teaching mankind. How were they teaching mankind? Through the schools of the sciences. After reading into such deep and powerful knowledge, I felt compelled in my heart and spirit to share this information, as it reveals the location of the Antichrist, as well as the creation of his superhuman army. The Antichrist is in the world. He is hiding inside of the world until he is ready to be revealed. His army is being created underneath us in all of these underground military bases. Throughout our civilization, they have been harvesting the purest and most best of human genetics, as well as the purest and most best of animal genetics, and they have been mixing them together and creating superhumans. This is going to be the army of the beast. The Antichrist is in the world. I must tell you this because the great deception is coming. This man will emerge from the underworld, from the civilizations underneath us. They will masquerade as coming down from the stars. Him and this superhuman hybrid army will deceive the entire world into accepting them as something new to bring peace about mankind. But as the Bible tells us, when they scream peace and safety, then instant destruction follows. I must tell you this because Jesus tells us, be careful that no one misleads you. Many will come in his name and claim to be the Christ. Believe them not. Be prepared. We are going to see nightmares unlike anything our minds can conceive. Entertainment, video games, movies, TV, they've been grooming us to accept these hybrids once they are revealed. They are starting to re-emerge from the underworld back to the surface. As the Bible tells us, Jesus himself says, in the days of the coming of the Son of Man, it shall return to the days of Noah before he stepped onto the ark. The earth was flooded because of the interaction of the fallen angels with mankind. The Bible tells us Jesus must return, or no man or living creature will survive what is coming. Be prepared. Keep your eyes open. Keep your mind open. Stay in constant contact with the Lord Himself, Jesus Christ, and fear nothing. Do not let your heart be troubled. Be prepared for what is coming. Prepare yourself so that you are not deceived. Prepare yourself so that you can identify the enemy once he has emerged.